It's almost a direct link. And we have, with 1,200 different townships across the state, we have a whole variety.
Yes.
Point of Barks Township, which is located at the tip of the thumb, has about 80 people. So that's a very small township, very limited in their scope and authority. Yet we have Clinton Township in Macomb County, which has over 100,000 people. So you can see the variety and needs are different for someone like Clinton Township versus someone like Point of Barks Township.
Absolutely. Now, what are some real hot button issues for township government?
Well, I think right now, certainly funding, and I think everyone is hurting across the state of Michigan. Families, every person seeking a job, maybe even many people in their current jobs, some people are not gaining in salary, they're actually losing. And we're losing property values. And that certainly, with the housing market the way that it is, that hurts everyone. And it hurts local governments as well. We're finding that for the first time, I mean, it's been 5-6 years now where a lot of the state funding has been difficult for us. But now we're actually seeing in many townships across Michigan, with the property values going down, we're now going to be collecting less money in tax revenue than we have been in the past. And so we're kind of it's a double-edged sword for us. It's state funding, and now at the local level as well, as property values decrease, the amount that a person pays. There are some areas of the state that are doing fine. One of the things that's been brought up in recent studies is that it seems like the shoreline is still doing fairly well. People still want that waterfront property. And those values seem to be retaining their value. But in a lot of areas, and especially in those communities that have grown in the last 5 years where subdivisions have gone in, a lot of those homes have lost their value. I personally happen to be in one of those in a township, but those tend to be the areas that's happening to. And so you might find that in your own district and in your own townships in your community. Those are I think, all kinds of funding issues. I think anything that townships can do to be more frugal. I actually, and I say it quite frequently, that townships are the most efficient form of government. I might be a little biased because of who I represent, but I think we do things very efficiently. But this is a time when we're certainly asking everyone to do as much as you can, and if you can find creative ways to gain revenue, it is the time to do it.
Now, let me ask you to walk me and the viewers through the process when you collect my property taxes. Where does it go? Because I get my little sheet from my township and from my treasurer, and I send my money in. How is it? What's the cycle?
And that's going to vary from community to community. A very small percentage of it goes to the township for actual township operations. We collect taxes for county government. So for example, at the county level, if maybe there's a millage for a new county jail, or maybe for Sheriff Road Patrol, that money, we would collect it, it would be on that tax bill, but that money is going to go to the counties. We collect it, but then we disperse it back to the county. Same thing if you have a school millage. Maybe there's a new school, a new elementary school being built, and so there's a millage for that, or maybe for busing, something like that. Those millages will show up on their tax bill. That will be collected again by that township treasurer, but that money is allocated and already dedicated for the schools. So we simply collect it and give it to the schools.
When you say give it to the schools, does it have to go like to the county treasurer, or does it go to the state, or how does that work?
It goes right to the school district.
It does?
It does.
See, I did not know that.
Unless it is money that is collected late. If someone is late with their property taxes, they'll notice it gets turned over to the county, and then the county then tries to collect a late tax bill with penalty and interest, and then in that case, it's the county that actually takes it in and disperses it to the local school.
That's interesting. I did not know that. So if I live in Leland Township in Leelanau County, and I pay my property tax bill, and it goes to the Leland Township, Leland Township treasurer, and they directly take that to like Leland schools. Is that how that works?
They would collect it and then turn it over to the schools, right? And that,
very interesting.
That money is turned back that way, and there's a lot of other
county
things
processes
that can be on there, right? Disperse the county money to the county. Library money. It just depends, and everyone's going to have a different millage on their bill. There's not two communities alike that are going to probably have a similar millage that's on their bill.
A lot of responsibility with the treasurer.
There is a
each
lot of
township.
responsibility, and the treasurer has to reconcile with all those local government entities to make sure that they received the amount of money that was coming to them, supposed to come to them.
And certainly, you know, as a township government relations person, you probably deal with townships that are going through recalls and all that kind of stuff.
We do. We just in this past election cycle, there were a number of townships that had recalls. It's a difficult issue. It's unfortunate, but for us, recalls tend to be sport in some communities.
Yeah, unfortunately.
People like to show up at the local township meeting, and if they don't like what's happening, they can recall someone or attempt to recall someone. And that unfortunately causes a lot of hard feelings. People have to go through fighting that off just to retain their job, and then they might have to turn around a year later and run for re-election. And so it does become costly too to that local government. We like to think that because township officials serve a 4-year term, that if they're not doing a very good job, they're elected out of office that next cycle.
Yeah. Hey, yesterday in the Senate, we worked on the general government budget. And I know that that's where a lot of your revenue comes from. Mostly, PILT's been added to
PILT
general.
has been added to that too.
Maybe you could help the viewers to understand the general government budget, what we did.
Sure.
That sort of thing.
The general government budget contains a number of the state budgets in it, and one of which includes the Treasury budget. Our state revenue sharing, which goes to local units of government, cities, villages, townships, and counties, is contained in that Treasury budget. And there is funding called revenue sharing for local governments. And a lot of people say, well, why is that there? It's there because way back a long time ago, really in the 30s, there was a feeling that local governments were taxing at different levels, and there should be a uniform taxing system. Income tax and sales tax, all kinds of things that are now uniform. Part of giving that away and the state saying we're going to collect it, the deal was we're going to collect it, but we're going to give you some of that money back. So that's how revenue sharing started. The money that in the past few years has been, because the state revenues have been difficult, it's been more difficult for us to get the levels that we hope to get, and there's been a lot of cuts in recent years. This most recent budget that has been worked on, the governor proposed a 4% statutory increase on the statutory side. It's a little confusing, but we get both statutory money, which comes from the state general fund, and we also get constitutional revenue sharing, which comes from sales tax collections. So there's a mix. Over 900 of our 1,200 townships only get now the constitutional revenue sharing, which comes through the sales tax. The statutory was increased by the governor by 4%, but for many communities it was not actually a 4% increase because that's only one portion of what they get their money from. That money in the Senate yesterday was reduced to zero.
It's, you know, working through the process because that's just one part of the general government budget being assigned by the governor and all that sort of thing.
And I know a week ago, roughly, there was a $400 million hole that was found by the state revenue consensus numbers that caused the Senate action. We certainly want to work with both the Senate and the House to try and restore as much of that as we can. Maybe those numbers will look better in the coming months.
Yes. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
I think this has been very beneficial to the people that I represent.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next month. This is State Senator Michelle McManus.